All right, everyone. It looks like we are live on both YouTube and DLive. Hopefully this is actually functioning. I'm trying to check all of the sources, and it does look like it's going out where it's supposed to. If anybody is not getting anything, definitely let me know in the chat. But it looks like it's coming through loud and clear. All right, so welcome to the 8th Secrets of Saturn live stream here on this lovely Wednesday evening. Tonight we'll be doing UFOs and Tesla technology. This was another Wayne idea, so we'll let him lead off in just a moment. But the one and the only Crow 777 is joining us for at least a little while. We'll see how long he sticks with us. So, gentlemen, hello.
Ahoy!
Good evening. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Secrets of Saturn Live. And just wanted to mention we're going out on the Fringe FM too for at least the first hour.
We should be. We should be on for the first hour. So that's 3 sources all at once. I think I could have tied in my Facebook too, but I really didn't want to just send it out on my normal channel. If anything, I got to figure out how to send it out to the Crow 777 study and discussion group. That would be cool too, but I guess we'll save that one for next week since I can't believe it. We actually got this to work properly. So I'll leave it up to Rose to run the DLive side of it. I'm going to keep an eye on the YouTube stuff, but it seems like everyone's seeing us because someone just said, "Nice haircut, Wayne." Oh, that would be Randy Neiman. Hello, Randy.
Holy crap, man. I work on my Thursday show, come back, and you guys are syndicated.
All right. I guess
thanks for the compliment there, Randy. I was trying to look more like you.
Mercy.
Randy, the Rand man.
So if anybody is not aware, I did get the soundtrack to Shoot the Moon up on CD Baby. We have a Crow 777 artist page made, so if anyone wants it, it is there for a $9.99 download. I uploaded the highest quality I could, so it should sound pretty spiffy, and I'm working on CDs next. Anybody else want to chime in anything before we get this conversation started?
Have people been finding that, Jason, on CD Baby? I haven't even looked.
It's easily findable by a search now. It even came up on a Google search that I did just for the hell of it. But only 2 people have bought it so far. So there you go. Bigfoot is a hoax.
We ought to mention here early on too, Jason. Sorry to interrupt, guys, but we ought to mention our sponsor, lowerthefriction.com.
Absolutely. We're gonna.
You guys are syndicated and you have a sponsor?
We have a sponsor.
Holy smokes.
The one, the only, Randy from Houston asked me if we would like to have a sponsor, just to try and see if it does anything. And as a matter of fact, he said 2 bottles, well, this is what I knew as of the other day, 2 bottles did get sold from mentioning it last week. So go to lowerthefriction.com and use promo code SOS for 5% off. And what is it? Well, I actually went to visit Randy from Houston in Houston, and he changed my oil, and we put a bottle of the engine oil treatment in, and I did indeed seem to have a quieter engine and get about 3 miles per gallon more on my trip back. That was my guesstimate, if I have to say. Well, it's supposed to work better as things go along because it actually starts getting into your engine doing its thing, but that was just 2 days ago, so we'll see. We'll see what happens. If I'm getting even 3 miles per gallon better, that will add up for the insane amount of driving I do in a year. So, and I believe the bottle is $59.99, and then if you use the promo code, you get 5% off. Got anything to add, Wayne?
No, I don't really have much to add. I would just like to add that I am familiar with the product because it has been on the market in one form or the other since 1975, and it is used by professionals in the racing industry as well as just your everyday ordinary people who want to just extend their engine life. So it is a good quality product. So if you guys have the means and are interested, give Randy the business. He's a stand-up guy.
That's for sure. Absolutely.
You know, it's a great product.
Yeah, you're never going to meet a more honest man than Randy. But I see a question already. Am I addressing questions in here? I guess I am. The second sun footage that I posted that I shot in 2016 was shot with a hydrogenalpha telescope, which means you're basically seeing that spectrum. They look different. If I had to venture a guess, is because you're looking through something at one of them and looking directly at the other. That's my best guess.
Cool. Yeah, we'll definitely take questions. We always keep these really nonchalant. We always pick a topic, but if anybody wants to talk about anything particular while we're here, absolutely not Not bad. Oh, 3 miles per gallon is a huge difference. Yeah, it might get more. I have a small engine and I don't drive like a maniac. So hopefully as it works its way into that little 1.5 liter Honda engine, it'll start doing better. We'll see. Even that was worth it though, you know. Randy's website is www.lowerthefriction.com. Go to the engine oil treatment, put in promo code SOS, and you'll get 5% off that $60 bottle. And if it starts building up and building up and building up, I think everybody knows how the scale of economies works. Obviously, we might be able to do a better promo in the future if he actually starts selling some. This is kind of a secondary project for him. He really likes the product. The reason why he's doing it is because he actually really believes in it. He knows the inventor of the formula and wants to get it out on the market again. And we're just trying to see what happens. And this is a great platform just to kind of give it a shot since we have a lot of open-minded folks out there. What do those different colors indicate, Crow? That's what the gentleman is asking.
That's a tough question. First of all, we're looking in the hydrogen alpha spectrum through a telescope. Although I did shoot it with that telescope with my full spectrum, what it tells me is there's a difference between the two things. Is one a reflection? Is one the source for the other? I don't know, but there's clearly a difference. You'll also notice that the one that's more red is less focused, as if you're looking through something at it. Fact is, we need to know a lot more than we do. As a matter of fact, I never would have put that out had Chris Van Matre not replicated it.
Yeah, do you want to take 2 seconds to go over that real quick? Chris Van Matre got an nearly identical, I think he had one thing that was slightly different, right? And then was starting to get the same results. He was seeing what you were seeing. So something in that equipment was obviously able to visualize it in a completely different location, hundreds of miles away, right? And he's in the middle of the country, if I remember correctly.
I think he's in Colorado. Yeah, and well, not only that, we thought in the same way. I was concerned that it might be a lens flare somehow that I couldn't figure out. So I got a long cardboard tube and put it over the end of the telescope. Actually, what Chris did all those years later when he replicated it is he spray painted a tube inside and out black to really, with a flat black, to make sure it wasn't any kind of a lens flare. The point here is we know that there's two things you can image up there. That's about all we know. We know one of them is the sun, of course. We know the other one's almost the identical same size. For my money, I think when the conditions are right, maybe if the time is right, you could image this without hydrogen alpha at sunrise or sunset. I think that's maybe part of what chemtrails cover. If you ever notice and you try to see a sunset, where I have lived, it's been nearly impossible. I think since I've been in Rhode Island, I've seen, I don't know, 4 or 5 sunsets that weren't obscured by chemtrailing. There's got to be a reason for that.
Andrew is still asking, so it doesn't mean more hydrogen alpha or less, like a pH indicator? Well, I don't think we're really sure at this point, right?
Yeah, I can't honestly answer. I don't know enough to honestly answer what you're asking. I see what you're asking seems like a logical question. I mean, I know what you were thinking about when you asked it, but there's 2 problems here. We don't know enough about the event, and I don't have near the time filming the sun as I do filming the moon. I'd be much more apt to take a stab at a moon question. I have thousands of hours. I only have a few hundred hours filming the sun.
Cool. And of course, you and Chris want to, when you have time, be able to coordinate and see if you get, well, to see what you get if you do things at the exact same time in those different locations, right?
Well, not only that, when Chris replicated it, the 2 objects were in a different position or a different, orientation to one another. But as there's so much that goes into all this. If you remember the Dave Marsh episode, he took pictures of the moon that were identical and he put them across the top of his wall and then filmed each one and proved that the apparent rotation, like if you were looking at the moon and there was a 12 o'clock mark and it looks like it moves down towards 3 o'clock, what Chris Van Matre proved is the moon's probably not rotating. It's just the point of view as the moon apparently moves away from us. Chris Van Matre also proved that the moon is the closest to us when it's at zenith. So we got a lot to unlearn and we got a lot to relearn. And unfortunately, the sun is very difficult. I'm working on getting a permanent mount for my scope. If I can pull that off, you'll see a lot more from me in that vein.
And Crow does, of course, intend to do a lot more. He kind of had a little bit of a break there, but that was due to change of locations, and I know he's itching to get back to doing some serious stuff because I don't know if anybody has really captured the amount of stuff that he did over the course of 4+ years. Even to this day, I still think he's might be on top of that game. What do you think, Crow?
I think anyone could do it. All it takes is every minute of your life.
Eric in the chat room is asking, I can actually answer this too because Randy and I did this test one night I was visiting him. Have you noticed that Moonlight is cooler while outside shooting the moon? Randy and I did that with a thermal, what do you call it, little thermal infrared thermometer. That's what I'm trying to think of. Yeah, we tried that, and indeed, something about Moonlight, it was cooler than the shade. Very odd. But what have you come across?
Well, Eric, if you want to know some things, there's a book called Zetetic Astronomy, Zete, Zetetic Astronomy by Parallax, which is actually Samuel Robotham. He flat out demonstrates that they magnified Moonlight, I think something like 1,000 times, and proved that even magnified 1,000 times that the temperature goes down. In that book, he basically over 100 years ago said everything I said, with the exception of an explanation for what actually does cause an eclipse. I say it's the nodes from the old Vedic ideas. I don't think he was aware of it, but he literally verbatim went out, observed firsthand, which is what zetetic astronomy is about, and he said damn near everything I said 100 years before I did. When I read it, my jaw fell open, and I stayed up all night. I read that book cover to cover. But anyhow, it's a source if you're interested.
Have there been any pictures taken as the moon being an X-ray projection? It looks oddly like an X-ray photo, like the bones of something. Interesting thought.
I'm not aware of any weird, like to use a hydrogen alpha. Like I've tried to use my hydrogen alpha on the moon, but it's knocking down the light to a fraction of 1%, so the moon's not bright enough. But I have said for a long, long time, if you can get good spectral tools, the spectral tools we can get now are near IR and near UV. Back in the day, 70s, before that, you could get way further into these spectrums. And I have said for a long time, if anyone could get a hold of tools that got further into the spectrums, you would be able to film some amazing stuff.
Cool. All right, Wayne, this was your topic, so you want to lead us off?
Yeah, this is actually a very broad topic when you're talking about UFOs and Tesla technology, because Tesla had an awful lot of inventions, and, it could be argued one way or the other whether this was a real guy or not. I kind of tend to think this was a real person, but, the mythology that surrounds the things that he did have kind of escalated in recent years, and the things he's credited for may not be 100% on target with, what they try to push with him. But I think there was definitely a guy named Tesla who was pretty smart and figured out a lot of things about how electricity works. And more to the point, how a lot of things in our universe work. So when you look at it from that perspective, this guy is the one that brought us things like radio and wireless communication, things like that. So that cell phone in your pocket today, you wouldn't have it if there wasn't a Nikola Tesla who came up with these ideas and figured out ways to do this stuff. So what he was trying to develop was actually free energy technology, wireless electricity for everybody to use. But his plans of that got stymied pretty quickly once the banksters got involved. And isn't that so much like everything else in our world today? So that's kind of where we're at with that. But it could be shown that much of what's accredited to quote-unquote UFOs, these technologies, these propulsion technologies and whatnot, could trace their roots back to Tesla and a couple other heavy hitters in the physics community way back when, like guys like Maxwell and Heaviside and those guys. And you want to know something that a lot of these guys all had in common?
Autistic?
They believed in no, although maybe they would try to tell you that nowadays when they're pushing the autism narrative.
Right.
With that, but the one main thing they had in common is they all acknowledged the existence of the ether. And that's something that's missing from our modern physics today.
Thank you,
from
Einstein.
The times of, from the time of Einstein on, they kind of did everything in their power to push this idea just out of the mainstream scientific community. And still to this day, like you go to the major universities and stuff and all these science schools, and it's like, you don't want to mention the word ether to them because they'll ostracize you for it. They think it's absolute nonsense. But.
Yeah, I'll do it. And you can't have any mystical realities in a science-based world. But here's a weird thing to think about. So imagine there was an inventor less than 100 years ago who had a unique last name, and imagine that a modern corporation took that last name and turned it into a corporation. Does anyone see the irony in what's gone on there? So did they have to go to the Tesla family to license that? Or how does that work? That they were just so readily able to snatch the man's last name that was supposedly defamed by Edison in 6 Ways to Sunday.
Good question.
There's also the 1980s rock band Tesla, too, that stole his name, which, by the way, the Great Radio Controversy still holds up as one of the best albums of all time, in my opinion. But that's beside the point.
So, Crow, do you want to take a stab at describing what ether is, or even Wayne? I don't know if I would do it any justice. In my opinion, though, it's the original use of a cosmological constant, or the nonsense that they call dark matter these days. I think it's the other variable that they decided to shove off and start adding in other crap, but whoever wants to take a stab at that, go right ahead.
You could describe it as a mystical thing that's real, but more so, it's like the energetic glue that binds it all. And I describe it to people who have never thought about it. Like, if you're going to look at the old alchemical elemental ideas, which to me are many, many times more useful than the nonsensical periodic table that I will try to take apart someday, you have earth, air, fire, and water. There are 4 of them. Now, the 5th one, and correct me if I'm wrong, Wayne, is a Socrates or Plato is supposedly credited, and again, who knows if they existed, with the 5th element. The quintessence was called at the time. We call it the ether, but here's the thing. Not only was the ether known throughout time and used, and not only used in ways for human beings to make and do things, but at the spiritual side of a human being in meditation, making use of the ether. It's a bit like when you go to the beach, you want to see a wave, you need water. That water stands in for the ether, that wave stands in for everything that transmits in our world, from energy to light to anything, sound. But I lost my thread there. The quintessence, the ether. What happened, the reason that we lost it in the modern age, and it was already being defamed, by the way, everyone should know that if there was a man named Newton, it was clearly shown that he was an alchemist before all else, to put a fine point on it. And in the book Zetetic Astronomy by Samuel Robotham, also known as Parallax, he has 2 quotes from Copernicus and Newton, both of which said, these theories we've put forward can never be proven to be true. Just to put a fine point, get back to it, as we were coming into the modern era in the early 20th century, 2 dudes named Michelson and Morley did some experiments with the ether. And one of them, which really pissed off the power players in this world, was they took a beam of light and they split it. And they shot one beam the way the Earth is about to spin in that model, and the other beam from the same beam of light backwards where the Earth had just spun. And they proved in a way that could be replicated any day of the week that we're stationary. Wasn't long after that, old Einstein came along to dismiss the ether out of hand with no experiment, with no explanation, simply a dictate from a man who wore the same damn suit for his entire life, apparently. Hint, hint. I'm not buying anything. I wish that S-Frog was in here with us. He's taken apart all those old images. But did I drop anything there, Wayne?
No, it's a pretty good description. How I would describe the ether is this is kind of the substrate that our reality is built upon. This is kind of what could be described as counter space. So we exist within space. This would be counter space. It's not something that's necessarily measurable by our tools of science or by any physical means, because this is a non-physical thing. But this is basically the medium in which all things exist and have their being. So that this is what the ether is, and many of the ancient philosophers were very familiar with this idea, as well as a lot of scientists right on up into the modern era. Now, I believe, I have good reason to believe, that there are scientists within the special access programs, black budget community, that are well aware of ether physics and utilize it for different technologies that government contractors and subcontractors have in their possession and utilize. So I believe this is still the research on this idea of using ether as a mode of energy, or as a way to move things around or utilize different energies with, is something that is being researched and studied and forwarded within the black budget community. But up until the early 1900s, you had a lot of guys that still were hanging on to the whole ether theory until, like you said, Einstein stepped in and kind of dismissed it all out of hand, and the science of the day took on general relativity as the popular theory for a model of physics for today. And since then, they've had so many inconsistencies and stuff in the general relativity theory that such things as quantum physics sprung up to try to explain away what these inconsistencies were. So this is kind of what's going on even still today. They come up with all these mathematic formulas, like much of science today is all mathematics. That's
big long equations.
Mathematic formula, right, to justify the model that they believe. So they make up these different variables and stuff to stick in there to make it work. So it's one of those things where,
Math
what do you
can make
believe
up
that these
anything,
guys
right.
put out?
Well, I would.
I think it's fair to say you can make math.
Mathematical formula to explain anything.
Right, exactly. You can make
Pretty
math do
much.
anything you want. It's kind of a magical thing like that. By the way, I want to take a moment to thank John for the $2 super chat, saying, "Jason, you rock." Thank you, John. That's really cool of you. You rock too. You've been a big help to the work that we do. Thank you very, very much. John, by the way, is the amazing gentleman who donated the P1000 to Rose and I. So
Oh, wow.
all the work
Right on.
that I've been able to do with that so far is due to him. So thank you so much, John. Good to see you here. Glad you're hanging out with us. But go ahead, Crow. You were going to say something?
So let me take it back to brass tacks. Words have meaning, and even in this day and age, if you want to use one of our corrupted dictionaries, I should go over there and get my 1940s dictionary and look up quintessence. What they have now is it's a noun, the pure, highly concentrated essence of a thing. That's not a bad definition. The second definition is a noun, the purest or most typical instance. The third one is a noun. In ancient and medieval philosophy, the fifth and highest essence after the four elements of earth, air, fire, and water, thought to be the substance of the heavenly bodies and latent in all things. And I would point out, if there was a man named Tesla, he was using this, and I don't think there's much doubt about that.
Well, seeing as how he wanted to do wireless transmission of electricity, we're 100+ years later from the time Tesla was messing around with this stuff, and I don't see that. So perhaps Tesla understood something that we don't, and I would assume that high-end laboratories don't want us to.
Right, and that's something that I think is one of the main takeaways here is big money interests got a hold of Tesla's ideas and decided to pursue them in secret in ways where they could actually make more money off of them, because J.P. Morgan was famously quoted as asking Tesla when he came forward with this idea of free electricity for the people. He said, "How do I put a meter on that?" So, this was all about the business interests at the time. So they kind of stymied a lot of what Tesla was trying to do, first of all, right off of the bat. But going back to the idea of quintessence for a moment, there are some more modern physicists and stuff who have actually pursued this idea of ether or quintessence, but they by and large don't get a lot of attention. And one popular well, I shouldn't say popular. One theory that came forward starting in the 1950s and has gotten a little more attention today is something called extended Heim theory, where he actually refers to quintessence as being an important element within this. So this is basically the term that he uses to describe ether. So when they're looking at these things and trying to apply scientific terms to it, this is the term he came up with quintessence. Now, whether he was drawing from alchemical knowledge or not, like if he has any basis in metaphysics or anything like that to draw from, I'm not sure. I don't know enough about the guy to know for certain, but this is the term that he actually came up with, and it is a perfect descriptor for what the ether is and how it operates. So it's just a battle of ideologies when it comes down to it.
Well, I would add this, Wayne. Here's where I'm at. I think the periodic table that we have is meant to limit us. If we buy into a system like that, which at some point I will rip apart because it's fraudulent, and there are other books, there are good books written as early as the 40s or 30s, I think. The Universal One is one of those books that tells you the nonsensical nature of the periodic table. When you go back away from the physical, I can weigh it, taste it, touch it, science-y force field that gets jammed around everything, and you get back to alchemy, it is my understanding that I currently accept. If you philosophically take your elements and you philosophically come at these things and you connect spirituality to it, sky's the limit where you might go. And I think that science, a lot of what science has become has just been to retard us, basically. I mean, when I was young in school, I can still remember being told that within my lifetime, physics was going to get this one short, simple equation that put it all together where Einstein dropped the ball. Well, the exact opposite has happened. Mm-hmm. We now have a particle zoo where a new particle is invented every time they have a remainder they need to fill. And these equations, there's like, what, 100 people in the world that can deal with this math? That's how ridiculous it is. So how does science, even if you could show it's demonstrative of something, how does science at that level help humanity? It helps 100 dudes, basically, which is, well, not different than our computer technology, actually.
Right. Let me address a couple things here. Someone asked, who was it here? Human Boy asked about wireless phone chargers. Well, I actually have one right here for my iPhone. I don't know if you could really say it's the same thing. That the wireless concept that Tesla was going with was transmission through the air, like long distance, and that he would have transmitters set up in different cities, and you would have a little receiver box in your home, and that would be that. You wouldn't need a ton of wires, like you wouldn't have needed all of those massive amounts of copper running everywhere and all that.
Yeah, but Jason, I would say that I wouldn't dismiss it so readily, because what you've got to realize is the moment you removed all wires, the idea of resistance and losing power down a cord as the cord gets longer, when they started charging without all that, somehow they focused it, and somehow it's not all, just evaporating into the air. So I think you're talking about the same thing, and I think you're probably looking at the first initial steps towards transmitted energy, as, Tesla was claimed to have provided.
Well, that may be. Yeah, that may be true. So we got a couple super chats here. John, once again, for another $2. Thank you. He's asking, where does consciousness fall into this? And that is a very interesting question. I always look at consciousness being tied to your true spirituality, which in the way I theorize these things is that would exist on a frequency higher than things on the physical plane, or whatever you want to call it. But that's the way I view it. That I've seen spiritual stuff actually be real, and I know a lot of people have as well. And I think it has to do with frequencies and things of that nature. But anybody else want to try and address that?
I think that's really the big question. Look, that is the big question. How does consciousness relate to everything? And what is consciousness really? That's the big question that no man has ever really been able to answer with any certainty.
Without ether, they'll never answer it. And I would further say that if you go back to actually real old alchemical documents, real ones, that were written when people respected nature and would not do science outside the bounds of nature, that's what alchemy was about. What you will find is these men are praying, seriously praying, before they do any given alchemical procedure. It's all timed to the sky clock, and I'm down to the smallest thing. If you're going to harvest a plant, it gets harvested at the right time. When you do a certain part of a procedure, it occurs at the right time. But what I would point out is when I've been in other places of the world, like the Japanese, the old Shinto ideas, there's a spirit in everything. They even marry rocks and trees because from their point of view, there's a spirit. I respect that point of view. You can come to even the Christian Bible, where people will say, well, where is God? And they will tell you God is in everything. Everything. See that pebble? God's there. See that tree? God's there. So when you start to think about quintessence, the fifth element, alchemy, there's no separating that form of natural science from the spirituality of a human being. And I don't think you get from A to B, or the B we want to get to, without coupling spirituality back to it and simplifying it back to what's observable, and quit making up frickin' elements called Californicum, Einsteinium, and Berkeleum.
That exists for 3 nanoseconds.
Not buying. Not buying.
Let me take another moment here. JLCJBRB, thank you for the $10 super chat. And the message is 10 or 10. I'm not sure what that means, except it might be binary. But thank you very much anyway. If you have a question, by all means, hit us up. You were saying, Wayne?
I was just going to say, just to add to what Crow's saying, not only is there Einsteinium and Berkeleum and Californicum and all this other stuff, you have all these different particles that they name, like gluons and muons and this and that and the other.
And puons.
Yeah, puons and, everything else that they can think of. It's ridiculous, because what they're actually doing is nobody's ever actually observed these things. Nobody can observe a muon or a gluon particle. Right. All they're looking at is numbers coming out of the computer at them, and they're using the once again mathematics to put these variables in place to explain, the model that they want to exist. So they put in these variables, they make up these new variables and put them in place, and that's what this is. And it's the same thing. I think there are flaws with the periodic table. Now, there are some basic elements there that, we could see. But, yeah, I'm with you all day long. I think that there's definitely a lot of... Sorry, go ahead.
One of the definitions, Wayne, if you look up what it is an element, is that it can't be chemically divided. So on the face of it, things on that chart, they can be chemically divided. So it's sorry. All right, am I breaking up for you guys? I keep getting a lag.
No, you've been fine so far. Chat room, if there's any audio issues, give us a holler, please. But I don't think so. I think we're good. I keep jumping back and forth, and it seems like all of the streams are running well, so woohoo us.
Well, I'm trying to time it by looking at the YouTube window, but it's a lag, so I got to look at the Skype window. I'm trying to make sure Wayne's done, and I can see him in the Skype window.
Well, what you're getting, I haven't timed out how much, but what you're getting, like what I'm seeing on OBS is in the immediate, like I'm watching us in real time or near real time, and then when it kicks over to the Restream live dashboard, that's lagged, and then when it kicks out to YouTube and DLive, that's even more lagged. So it's kind of hard to keep up in real time here. For you.
Well, I know what I had forgotten. If you go to the book of Genesis and they're describing the creation, that's all based on the 4 alchemical principles of elements. It's all there. The more simplistic, kind of malleable way our natural environment was viewed before everything had to be put on a scale. If you can't touch it, it doesn't exist. If you can't weigh it, we're not counting it. Although that's a bit ridiculous now because they make up so many particles, it's beyond the pale. And by the way, you go to a place like these supposed particle accelerators, I'm not buying for a second. I would not be surprised to find out that they're actively involved with the fifth element, the quintessence. And if you logically, I've got enough of a computer background that I could honestly tell you what they always show you is, these particles are going around, they just crashed. Look at this spirograph pattern on the computer. Yep, that confirms that these particles crashed. You know what that means? Even if there was any reality to it, which I can pretty much prove isn't, based on the Higgs boson nonsense. But what that means is the only person who could actually truly tell you what was measured was the man who wrote the computer program and connected it to the sensors that made the spirograph pattern. Everyone else is just acting like they know something.
Science.
They blinded you with science. But if you go, there is a Nova, a clip of from Nova, that so compromised TV show from that so compromised public broadcasting. Jason and I are going to do a thing on this because people still think KPBS is publicly funded. No, I'm sorry, it's CFR funded.
Yeah.
But to get back to the point, when they announced the Higgs boson was real, I have never seen a worse piece of theater in my life. As a matter of fact, it came down to the announcer, who was not a physicist, saying to the audience, "What do you think, guys, if we found the Higgs?" And everyone claps, and he goes, "There it is. We've discovered the Higgs boson."
Of course they know, Crow. The machine went ping.
Yeah, exactly. Well, what was even
there
worse
it is.
Mr. Higgs boson himself was in the audience, and the guy says, "But Mr. Higgs can't come up and talk today." And you look at this dude; he looks like a freaking deer caught in the headlights. But in that whole show, one dude in that whole show tells the truth. They're all getting all these physicists up to this board, and they're all, "Where are they going to find the Higgs?" "Oh, right here in this area." "No, right here. It's going to be in this range." "No, that range." And this one guy walks up and he says, "They're never going to find it because it doesn't exist."
It's all a bit fuzzy. We have 2 more super chats. John, thank you again for $2. He's asking, is ignorance really bliss? That always makes me think of the line from The Matrix. I personally don't think so. I like the concept of expanding one's consciousness through knowledge. I think knowledge is power, but I always boil things down to as simple as I can, and that's the way I view it. But what do you gentlemen think?
Ignorance is bliss until you need to do surgery.
Wayne, what do you think?
I would say no, absolutely not. Ignorance is not bliss. It would be the exact opposite of bliss, honestly. It's one thing to walk through existence with blinders on, but it really doesn't buy happiness when it comes down to it. You don't find fulfillment by being ignorant. That's one thing that's really missing. Yeah, and that is a popular phrase, ignorance is bliss. And it seems like a lot of people who really have no interest in learning new things or looking into the mysteries of the universe or anything of the sort, they seem happy enough on the surface, but just look at our society today. 1 in 5 has some sort of mental illness. 1 in 5. Those numbers are staggering. So when you look at that, is ignorance really bliss? I don't think so. I would rather have a curious mind and go searching for something more than myself, you know what I mean, rather than just walk around in a fog and and be in ignorance like that.
Let's keep in mind that the less you know, the more other people can fool you because they know something you don't. We have Mountain Smithy for $5. Thank you so much. And Mountain Smithy always sends in these quotes from places I don't know where they come from, but I have no problem reading them. This week, Mani is the Icelandic personification of the moon. To manifest is to prove or show plainly, to record in a ship's manifest. And that is quoted from Blackest of All Magic. You know, I really should start writing these down so I can look up these things you're sending us every week. Mountain Smithy, why don't you send me an email at secretsofsaturn@gmail.com so I can have a better understanding of what you're always sharing with us here. And yes, we do have the machine that goes ping. All right, Wayne, it's back to you. Where do you want to take this?
All right, well, let's look at we wanted to do a show on UFOs and Tesla technology here, so we were discussing wireless electricity, and what you were saying before about these little wireless charging devices and stuff. Yes, this is directly lifted from Tesla technology. This is kind of a very primitive form of what he was working on, and he actually was able to make it work. He built a transmitter out in, I believe it was in Colorado, out in Colorado Springs, and he was able to wirelessly transmit electricity. I think it was about 100 miles or better. So he actually was able to test it out and made it work. So, I mean, this is something that's still feasible today. It could be done. It's just a matter of nobody's really gone with it. So it's just one of those things where, the powers that be, the people with the purse strings, they never really fully funded this because, let's face it, they really didn't want something like that to come about, because then it could get to the point where it was out of their control. But can you imagine where we would be if everybody had access to wireless energy today? Things would be so much different than what they are. But, instead we're tied to a power grid, and we have all these wires and everything else going into our homes for electricity, when it could be so much simpler than that. There could be so many potential uses for this, and also you just look at it's the same function, same basic premise for how our cell phones work. It's the same thing. It's transmitting. It's just not transmitting usable electricity in a sense. But that technology will be coming, down the pike, because it's only so long they can hold this stuff back before people are really yearning for it, and that will be coming. I guarantee you that. But I wanted to discuss some of these technologies in regards to UFOs and things like that, because the UFO topic seems to be picking up a little more steam lately. So we could take a look at how some of these UFO craft operate, and we could talk about what we think their origins are. You have anything to chime in about what the origins of UFO craft might be?
We did a show on this together. In fact, I remember because Rose and my daughter and I were visiting her family out in California at the time, and we discussed a lot of these points and where it all came from. And somebody said, you guys should take phone calls. A haunted house said we should take phone calls. I don't know how we'd set that up. I'm sure there's a way to do it. I'd have no problem with that. But yeah, we did a show on that. And it was quite interesting. A lot of this stuff, I really think it does come down to experimental craft. But I know this is one of Crow's favorite things to discuss, so go ahead, man. Oh, did we lose him?
I don't know. Where'd the bird guy go? We're missing the bird guy.
He's still showing on here. Maybe his... I
don't know. Something happened.
Oh, he said be right back.
Maybe we didn't...
I didn't see the chat that he sent us. Never mind. It's so hard to keep up with all these different windows. All right, we'll continue on. So anyway, Wayne...
Well, we'll continue on.
Right.
Anyway, we could look and see. A lot of people seem to think that there's some kind of a back engineering program that's doing back engineering on alien technologies, and I'm here to say I don't buy that so much. I think we don't give human beings enough credit for their ingenuity. So we could trace back the lineage of a lot of where these things came from, right back to Tesla and several individuals back in that era and just after that said era. So when you look back, you could trace back a lot of these ideas, these electrogravitic ideas, back to scientists such as Tesla himself was said to have been able to develop something along these lines. And then further on down the line, one important figure that came up in my research a lot into this is a gentleman named T. Townsend Brown. And he discovered something in the 1920s called the Byfield-Brown effect. And what this is this basically allows motion through the use of electrical currents, and it creates kind of an anti-gravitic field of sorts, for lack of better terminology to describe it. So This is kind of what he had worked on, and up into the 1950s, he worked for the Naval Department and several other government-funded contractors and such, and was developing programs with this. And he came out in the 1950s with something called Project Winter Haven, and this was a proposal that was sent to the Naval Department, which they supposedly had turned down the offer for him to develop this technology. And at that time, all of this stuff, which was pretty public in the 1950s about electrogravitics, suddenly went black. It all disappeared out of major media outlets and stuff like that, and nobody's really heard much about this line of technologies since then. So this, I think, is the real origins of where a lot of these UFO craft come from. It's not to say that aliens don't exist. Maybe they do. I don't know, but I don't think they're described properly. they're misdescribed, just like everything else that we're told. So, when you look at this stuff, is it really an alien intelligence? Does it really take an alien intelligence to think of these ideas? I don't think it does. So, when you look at it, when you trace it back to Tesla, who came up with a lot of these different ideas, and then, you play it forward to these different scientists coming in the future who took some of these ideas and made other discoveries with them, then you can see there's a clear delineation of how a lot of this stuff came to be. But a lot of this is tied up in programs that most people have never even heard of. So, I mean, there's a bunch of these different programs and stuff that have happened and have been funded and done, but most people have never taken the time to really look back at them and see what they are, because it's just easier to say aliens. So that's that seems to be the popular thing. Hey, look, there's a flying saucer craft in the sky. It's aliens. And that's, you might as well say unicorns, okay? So, hey, look, a unicorn. So it's the same kind of thing. I mean, you can't jump to that kind of a conclusion because you see something that, doesn't really agree with what your experience has been with what the state of technology is, because they're working with technologies in the black budgets programs and stuff that are beyond things we could imagine right now. So it's, one of those things where you could show through time that they have been bare minimum 30 to 50 years ahead in the military industrial complex programs than what are presented to the public with these things, especially when it comes to like aircraft, spacecraft type technologies, things like that, advanced propulsion systems. They're keeping this stuff hush hush because they don't want the general public to get a hold of this, because a lot of times the implication is free energy devices, and that is something that they need to keep a tight grip on.
There's the big one.
And alternate science, but I would modify a couple things there. Everything you've ever heard about so-called aliens is nonsense. It's provable nonsense. We can show you where it starts. We can show you all the typical encoding that comes with it. We can show the CIA's involvement. We can show even from the earliest things, the military is right there. It would not surprise me if part of the reason the alien idea, like Hollywood has put it in our heads, came to be was to hide certain technologies they were worried people might see. So if anyone saw anything they weren't familiar with, they'd yell alien. But what's more, I suspect that if we get to anti-grav or gravitics, electrogravitics, and all the things Wayne was talking about, you're going to be probably dealing with people who went back to the old alchemical ideas, the philosophical elements and the quintessence, the ether. And that alone tells you something. If that's correct assumption, then that's technology that could never come out into the public, because then people would start moving away from science when they realized, hey man, this is not a battery, this is not, that's where I'm coming from. But the whole alien UFO thing, I can show you where it started in Hollywood, and I can show you where it started in media. I can show you it was all off the 33rd parallel where it got started. There's no portion of it that we can't demonstrate was put in your head through newspaper, media, the military, and Hollywood, basically. And that does not discount the idea of other things a human being could communicate with. And by the way, religions around the world are full of people in meditation learning from a higher intelligence of some sort. But it's not gray aliens that want to rectally probe you.
Whoops. Let's just slip that right on in there. Let's take a moment and go over that, because that's another one that the three of us have done before. We've got, I don't know, Crow, 2 or 3 episodes on UFOs / aliens, and we've done this. And we even showed like where the reptilian thing came from and the little gray guys. Like, we've done this. There are episodes of Crow 777 Radio where we broke all of this down in detail. But if you want to take a moment to go at that, Crow, go right ahead.
Well, I don't know if, they're good. Rose is here. Rose will give you the episodes. We broke it down. To me, these are not arguable things if you want to use common sense as your basis. Common sense dictates that we can't just claim a thing exists because it's an idea. If you have no experience to let you know it's possible, if you can't see it, if you can't get proof of it in some way that matters, and by the way, 20th Century Fox's latest film does not count as evidence, It doesn't exist. That's just common sense right there. But Rose put up episode 54, the whole alien thing. What was it, Jason? It was lifted from Conan the Barbarian.
Conan the Barbarian was the reptilians,
and then, people got upset because it's either the Emerald Tablets or the Kabbalion, which I've read both a number of times. The idea that alien reptilian entities somehow snuck through there. They started bringing that up. And I'm not going to touch that because that starts to get into people's spiritual beliefs, and I'm smart enough to understand that in most spiritual traditions, any word that matters that you read has levels of meaning, and quite often it's allegory, and quite often, unless you're initiated, you ain't never gonna know. Like the book of Hebrews in the Bible, if you're not initiated, that will mean exactly nothing to you, because it was written by initiated people above the Royal Arch. But yeah. But there was more than just 54. Rose put up 54. Rose, isn't there? I thought we did more than
we did. We did a UFO one that we got into aliens with Wayne last. When was that? September. Last September, I think that was September 2017. 18.
And by the way,
2018.
As a rule of thumb at this point in the world, there are so few corporations that we can prove outright. And these are trilateral CFR-funded corporations, by the way. They own the media. So whenever you see Hollywood putting money into ideas, the primary concern, as you can demonstrate now, is not to make beautiful art, like, say, Lawrence of Arabia, is not to entertain you. The primary concern is to program you. Then everything else comes behind it. Yeah, maybe we'll entertain them on the way, or maybe, all these other ideas. But primarily now, what these forms of what we call entertainment do is they program you. I cannot turn on a show on television where I can't quickly count 5, 6, 7, 8 ongoing programming scenarios that have been initiated. Right now, gender confusion is big. The fear porn has been at fever pitch for some time. I can go right down the line, and I'm here to tell you, what we call entertainment, whether it's television or anything else these days, the primary concern is programming. And what people don't understand is that there's these dudes, and I'm not even kidding, from Tavistock, who sit there pre-production to make sure the nonsense makes it in, which implies sometimes the directors don't even really truly understand what's going on. I think that's very unlikely in most cases, but those little snotty-nosed 30-year-old writers, Hollywood, cool guy writers, they don't have a clue, the majority of them. There are some that have recurred over and over and over. They're usually Jewish. They're usually smarter than everyone else in the room. My point is, Tavistock has people wherever media is going out to insert the programming, to the point where when you watch something as simple as ridiculousness, what you're looking at was pseudoscience pioneered by Tavistock. It's called trauma-based programming, where they figured it out. They do the same thing every day when you try to get your weather off the news, and they inform you a lady got stabbed, a house burned down, and a car rolled over somebody. The way these stories are designed is to inflict trauma-based programming on you, because subconsciously you suffer a level of trauma that's not measurable. Tavistock pioneered that based on the work of Carl Jung, by the way. So, this is the problem we have when Jason and I do all these shows, Wayne and I do all these shows, is people have not committed to the idea that, all this cool stuff we get to watch like Marvel, it's not primarily there for entertainment. It just isn't.
That's right. Can someone post the link for the D Live to Green Queen? I can't go jumping around copying stuff or it's going to screw up my screens, but...
Rose put it in a little while ago.
Yeah. If someone can just copy and paste that in the chat room for me for Green Queen, that would be great. Thank you, folks. We're getting close to the end of hour 1, which is when we say goodbye to the Fringe FM. So let's see if we can get some more info out real quick. Cosmos of Compassion is asking, do we think that we can escape the reincarnation soul trap at death? How does one escape this matrix at death? That's something you and I had a pretty heavy conversation about not too long ago, Crow.
Yeah, there's not been a culture or spiritual tradition that I'm aware that matters that isn't what it was initially about. Was getting out of this place. It's like in some of the Buddhist traditions, what they call this world? They call it samsara. it's got many meanings, but you could maybe translate it as wandering. You're wandering here. You know, you asked about ignorance and bliss. That's the difference between ignorance. Ignorance is like a deer in the woods where you just react to things because you don't know anything. So you don't really think, you just react. And a lot of people in this world react. That's what they do every day. They react, they react. There is a path out of here. I would bet everything I've got on it. And there's not very many things I would bet everything on.
I would go back to the concept of frequency again. If you can raise yourself up high enough that you can deal with these things differently upon shredding off your mortal coil, I would think. But Wayne, what do you think?
I think there's an interesting crossover here to this and the things we're talking about. When you're talking about the whole alien narrative that comes about, John Lear used to talk about this years ago. Now, he claimed that the gray aliens had some kind of a tower structure on the backside of the moon, and this was actually a soul recycling center where people's spirits went when they died and got placed back into this Earth again. So you know, that's an interesting crossover link. You could see how some of these ideas that come back from ancient metaphysics and you know, these ancient religious ideas kind of get pulled forward and thrown into the whole science fiction alien narrative here. So this is something that should be telling. I mean, there could be something to this. Now, does the moon play a role in, you know, the souls of people after their death? I don't know for sure, but I mean, you could definitely see there might be something to this idea. And as far as getting out of here, I would say, yeah, there definitely has to be a way. And this has always been one of the main reasons for our being here, in my estimation, is, you know, this is a test. This life is a test. And we're put here to do the right things and make the right decisions so that we can ascend to the next level and go on to the next place. So that's what my estimation is of it. But I just thought it was interesting to mention that this kind of crosses over into this whole alien narrative once again in, you know, that respect.
I'm glad you brought up the moon in that way. I've been doing research for, I don't know, months now. Jason and I are going to end up doing one on the 60s again, because there's a lot of things we can demonstrate, almost certainly. But part of what will probably come into that is the idea of the Rain Man. And it's basically an encode for the idea of a devil, but it's directly relatable to the moon. So much of what we see is directly relatable to the moon, the idea of the soul trap and these other things. And what initially got me going on this is when I began to realize these eclipses are not described properly. And so one of the first things you do is you start looking at the descriptions. Well, how many people out there understand that when you see the supposed shadow from a lunar eclipse, it's described as an umbra and a penumbra? These words are loaded words. They've got a lot of meaning in them. And the umbra idea relates directly to the umbrella. And the umbrella has been used as a secret sign in so much media for so long, I can't tell you. But think of what an umbrella does. It blocks you from the rain. It puts you under a shadow. There's your umbra idea. It's almost always associated with power. But not only that, in popular culture, the Rain Man thing came up way more times than I was expecting to find. I mean, it's almost insane. And this all relates back to the moon. So I think absolutely the moon plays a role here in what's going to happen. And I'll tell you another thing, the mind warp from film, which is what film does for us these days, maybe not always to the same level it does now, but they put confusion in you. And it's not just confusion for the sake of confusion. It's well-designed mind games from places like Tavistock, where they've used Jung and Freud and other people to prove what they're doing works. There used to be this idea in film, oh, this guy died. Yeah, when you die, go into the light, man. Go into the light. You'll see everyone you love. And then not too long after that, it was, no, man, don't go into the damn light. Whatever you do, don't go into the light. And you've seen versions of both of these sides the whole way. But at the end of the day, there used to be such a common tool symbolic tool used in film where a person would die, there would be a quick shot to the moon, and a baby would be born. It's done in all these esoteric ways, sometimes in your face, sometimes hidden, but it goes to show you, and I have a feeling this relates to the population of life on this world. And I now doubt outright that somehow population of human beings could become a problem, or deer, or rabbits, or anything. This place is perfect, this creation, from our point of view. So could it be called perfect if too many people could come here and destroy the whole place? I'm not buying these things, but anyhow.
Now addressing this whole. Oh, by the way, I think we're off the fringe right now. It's 9 o'clock, so take care, everybody over there, and let's move on into our second hour. But as far as do you go into the light or the darkness, I actually had an out-of-body experience, and I know I've told this story before. I didn't see any light. I was just out of my body, away. I don't know what the distance was, but I was across the parking lot from where the incident was going on with a car, and I didn't see any light. I didn't sense any other beings. I was just consciousness coexisting at the same time as my physical body. I actually have it's very odd to explain, but I have a set of dual memories. It's almost like I was in that linear time and then in nonlinear time, which kind of goes right along with my theory, which is one of the things that helped me make it, in fact, that our consciousness and spirituality and spiritual beings and ghosties and all, whatever you want to call them, exist on a wavelength higher than light, because that would put them outside the physical realm. But I didn't see any light, and I had my head cracked open, and they thought I was dead, the people who I was with, when my body hit the ground and all that. So I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. I certainly won't know until I get there.
I can give you first-hand accounts that I've read, and I mentioned samsara earlier. I consider the old cultures that are mostly not with us anymore, that were big into meditation, where you could go across cultures and find people saying the same thing from cultures who should not have had any contact and claim they didn't have contact, but independently found the same things. There's an idea of a thing called the Bardo. Well, that's the most modern version of it, before China knocked over Tibet. But that came back to India. But the last version is called the Bardo, where you go when you're dead and you're getting ready to be recycled back according to that tradition. But there's all these opportunities to escape what they call samsara here, this place of suffering. But most people are not, as Jason would say, at a high enough awareness, so they miss what they call the clear light. It happens so quickly if you're kind of a dullard. If you're more tuned in and higher up the ladder, the clear light could last longer. And I'm just telling you the description that came across many meditators who claimed that they could go to what happens to people in death in meditation after a life of learning how to do it. But they always describe two lights. One is piercing and will scare the hell out of you, and you'll flee from it. And the other is dull and inviting. And if you go into the dull and inviting one, you're coming back here. You're getting put in the recycle machine, and you're coming back. If you go into the piercing one, you escape. Almost sounds like the sun and the moon idea to me. But what always bothered me about it was the lights always had color, and they could never quite be sure of what the color was, leaving me to say, well, what the hell? Did people actually do this? Because, it's not hard to differentiate blue from red, yellow from pink. That's the only thing that bothered me. And then I began to think maybe you've got to be initiate or something to get the full scoop. But there's another version of the lights in a very old tradition that was at least a third of the world at times.
By the way, Eric, who did our artwork for Shoot the Moon, is in the chat room and wants to have a chat with us. So let's hit him up after we get done.
Eric. Yeah,
Eric, yeah.
I had to get over to my other. Hey, Eric, how are you? Eric did artwork for us. Kick butt artwork. Mm-hmm. I admire art.
I don't know if he's ever seen the giant posters I had made.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Jason sent me a giant poster that Eric designed, based on the kind of look and feel of the art that I do, but better.
He looks like he designed a logo for Secrets of Saturn as well. I'd love to see that. So yeah, let's make sure we get in touch with them. Thanks, Eric. You do great work, man. Really.
He does. Talented.
I'm tempted to go into my closet and pull out. I don't have one in a frame yet. So actually, I can't do that. Never mind. I'll get around to that though. I'll show you guys. I had full movie poster size posters printed up with the main image that Eric made for us. That's the one that's on all of the Shoot the Moon stuff. But I had that done up. That's just awesome. I love the work he did. But anyway, thanks, Eric. We'll definitely be in touch. So Wayne, where would you like to go from here?
I think that's a really interesting turn on the conversation right there that we just had. So it's definitely one of those things where when it all comes down to it, what we want to know is what exactly is consciousness, and
exactly
where do we go? Where do we go from this place, and how does consciousness tie to all this stuff? And I would say that our consciousness directly stems from and into the ether. And I think this is an important aspect that's missing from our modern science. And I think Tesla had somewhat of a grasp of this idea, as well as some other of these scientists that came up through the years. But basically, what our culture has done is they've kind of steered us into this hyper-materialist mentality, whereas we're just looking at physical things, and we're not taking into consideration any of these spiritual type ideas or spiritual type energies. So when you're not accounting for a major portion of our existence, that's very binding and limiting. So I agree with Crow that our science is largely designed at this point to limit us and bind us.
Yeah.
Right, retard us. So, and that's basically a conclusion I came to on my own prior to meeting Crow. But once we kind of all got on the same page here, working at these things and looking at these things, I'll tell you, my level of understanding has really jumped within the past year or two. Just working with you guys with a lot of this stuff. So
chemical change in the brain, man, it happens.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it's really been kind of eye-opening for me, this whole thing, and it's just astounding. I got so many things on my plate right now that I'm looking at and working at and trying to tear apart and turn into something intelligible to relate to people, so that they could have a better understanding too. So this is one of those subjects that's always been near and dear to my heart. I've always been interested in UFOs. In fact, that's one of the things that really sent me on this path. Is I had a UFO experience back in 2006, where I kind of began to question what exactly is that. So I went down all the usual ufology rabbit holes and stuff like that, and followed all those different trails to their conclusion, where they drew back to ancient alchemical ideas, and they drew a lot of the aspects and stuff of them from older ideas, more spiritual ideas. So once I realized that's what was going on with this, I had to look at it from a different point of view. And once I tried following the whole alien rabbit hole trail down to where it comes from, there wasn't anything there. Like, when it comes down to it, there's really no provable evidence that any physical aliens have ever been here or are coming here or that kind of thing. There's nothing you could prove with that. Now, are there spiritual beings perhaps that kind of blink in and out of our reality? I think that's a real possibility. But as far as physical extraterrestrials from other planets, I don't know. That's one of those things where I have my doubts about that. As far as
I was going to add, Wayne, you and I, we were showing, you can actually show the first time words were used. That was Kenneth Arnold. He was a CIA operative.
Mm-hmm.
He was connected to the CIA. What more do people need to know? But the consciousness thing, I wanted to add this, Wayne. You can kind of reverse engineer some things that are not easily, that you can't easily work out. And I would submit that what we see with all the fear porn and the 9/11s and the false everything is they're hacking consciousness. So what is that? Well, what they're doing is each of us has free will, so they're hacking into each of us. Like, I just noticed someone commented that this world is a hellhole. Well, where does that perception come from? Is that your perception, or is that how you feel because of all the hardship that's been placed in front of us recently? You see what I'm saying? Because if it's the latter, that's a hack. And so what happens is then we all begin to add this control that's been exerted on us through ideas and imagery and symbols into the whole. The idea of the Akashic record. And actually, I'm to the point now where I am convinced that nothing that ever happens is lost. I think it's never, I don't think anything is lost that we do. And I'll add another thing. The idea of righteousness or doing what is correct, I think that may be the most important thing a human being can do above all other things if you want to get out of this place.
John, thank you for the $20 super chat. And he says, I'm sorry I missed Shoot the Moon NYC. We'll be doing more of those events, so you'll have plenty of opportunities. But thanks again, John. That's really cool of you.
Nice.
And I agree with you 100%, Crow. I think, doing what's righteous and what's right is probably the biggest thing we could do in this time that we're here. In fact, with a private conversation I had just last week with Jason and Rose, I had said something similar to Rose. I said, I live my life by one basic credo. If you know it's the right thing to do, do it. And that's how I live my life.
That's an easy one.
So it is.
It's actually not, though, to do all the time because of the age of materiality, though. It's
Right.
it's easy to understand. It's easy to say you're going to do, but to do it all the time, it's like everything else. It's got to become a habit. We're creatures of habit, and that's part of the mind hack. If they can get us habitually ordering food instead of cooking, then that's a hack. What's Grubhub about? What's all this I'll deliver everything to your home about? Movies. Think of movies. How many people go out to see movies or stream them in their home a few times? That's a mind hack. These are things that you would not have done independently on your own that you are doing because someone else is making it possible and pushing the idea. But you go back to all these old cultures. Look, think of the idea that I've been bringing this up a lot lately. The idea of the Vestal Virgins. That's real to me, whether or not Rome existed in the way we're told it did, which I don't really accept that it did. The point is the idea of these young women who are pure of heart and disconnected from the worldly nature of the way the rest of us are living, that does make them unique. And if they couple with that a righteous lifestyle, I think it's a powerful thing. And if we look at the idea of Rain Man or the devil or, people who want to do, what are they always doing? They're trying to tempt you into doing something you shouldn't do, right? And I think all these things demonstrate that we all add to the consciousness and that there are very few of us right now who are very high up the ladder and doing what's right all the time.
I also find that very interesting, Crow. You mentioned the Rain Man concept. I find that utterly fascinating because that's also directly tied to autism now, and that's another avenue of thought that I haven't explored yet. But
oh, really?
Now I'm going to look heavily into it.
Well, we got
to put the dots together with what the whole Rain Man thing meant. I just thought it was just the name of the movie. Yeah.
Well, no,
we're definitely going to have to explore that further.
Yeah, think about what goes on in the movie, though. But now we'll talk offline. I can rattle off probably 15 artists who have done the Rain Man thing in their song recently, and I can tie it to the umbrella, and I can tie it to quite a bit to include the moon. And you already know the Rain Man. The movie, there's a mentally challenged person there. I don't know if it's autism or retardation or what it's supposed to be, but that's all the way back in the 80s, isn't it?
That that movie was like 86 or somewhere around there.
Talk about a tee up.
Uh-oh. 2 minutes to Wapner. KT cleans a lot.
Kmart sucks.
KT
Tom
cleans a
Cruise.
lot says, I don't understand the term all roads lead to Rome. What the hell is that supposed to actually mean? Well, just that. You have to understand it. Don't look at it so much as Rome, but more in the more current sense of the Vatican and the control mechanism that's there.
Everything we have in the modern age that we can still see, that's the termination point. That's as far back as you can go. They'll tell you about a place called Greece, but you'll just hear tales and myths about that place. The real history before supposed Rome doesn't exist, and everything from our law. I mean, is there anything that we've covered, Jason, that we couldn't draw a line back to the Vatican? All banking, all law, all births, all straw men, basically the things that make people wish they weren't living in this world right now. There it is, man. The Holy Mother Church.
I'll do you one better.
Yeah.
I'll do you one better. The technocratic control grid that's coming. That's going to be in my new book. That ties back to the Vatican too.
Well, I like that. Let's have a little precursor. Let's hear it, Wayne. It's good stuff. I know it is.
I don't want to reveal too much just yet. I mean, I'm still working on it. I found a lot of interesting things that tie back to the whole Roman kind of idea, the Holy Roman Empire, the Vatican, and how it all kind of pulls forward today into the coming control grid that's being set up around us right now. So the Vatican does have its hand in a lot of this stuff, or what do you want to call the Holy Roman Empire? It's kind of pulled forward into the modern age today. So all roads do lead to Rome, and there's no denying that. So it's just one of those things. Everything in our modern world is based upon Roman concepts or Roman concepts
Absolutely.
that imported older Greek concepts.
Yep.
So when you look at that, it's very foundational. So that's what all roads lead to Rome means. Because when it comes down to it, the Vatican is just the rollover of the Holy Roman Empire into a different what would you call it? It's a new face for the same thing.
Yeah, it's what I always say, Wayne. The Roman The Roman Empire did not fall; it became the Vatican, and really, just the power didn't go anywhere; it stayed right there. What do we always say, Crow, too, about the doors that got put on the
Senate doors from ancient Rome were the doors put on St. John's Basilica, the first Basilica of Rome. But I'm not even convinced that ancient Rome, that we see all the costumes and all the culture, I'm not sure that that's an accurate description. How do we know that it wasn't just a form of the Vatican before that? Because there is no separating one from the other. There just really isn't. And by the way, to get back to the idea of doing what is correct, anyone interested can look up a very ancient idea. It's a word called bodhicitta. Look up the word bodhicitta and look up some of the people who supposedly achieved bodhicitta. The idea is that like a constant rainbow of goodness flowed out of these human beings into the world because that was the level they'd reached. And it's not just from one culture. This went thousands of years seemingly, and it was every place that any Eastern tradition had a version of the idea of bodhicitta.
Well, we could also take a moment to mention the three city-states that exist in the world, and that's a concept. We did a whole show on that quite a while back, but it is what it is, man. That like these are things you can look up. This is, again, not conspiracy theory crap. This is reality. Washington, D.C.
You know what's
What's that?
Oh, sorry. We're lagging out, Jason. Go ahead.
Washington, D.C., the city of London, not London City, but the city of London, if people aren't aware, and Vatican City. They are all cities that are actually city-states. They exist inside another country that are all independent. And the general notion is the Vatican runs the spiritual aspects of the world, the City of London runs the banking aspects of the world, and Washington, D.C. runs the military aspect of the world. And if you take a moment to think about it, that sounds about right. And John, thank you for the $2 again, saying I have nice hair. You're very kind. I'm actually using a new treatment that if you'd like to know more about, ask Rose to explain it to you, from her best friend Kelsey in Hawaii. I'm about a week into it, and it seems to be doing really good things. But go ahead, Crow, it's all you.
Well, I was going to point out there's a real irony with the Vatican right now because they're actively involved in trying to shrink what we call Christianity. Here in the state of Rhode Island, which is probably one of the biggest Catholic states left in this country, where you have these grand stone churches that feel like they're from another time because of the level of craftsmanship and masonry that went into these buildings. Matter of fact, they can't even find people to repair them, but they're closing them one after the other here. Right now, and I've had my eye on this for a while, right now the Vatican is actively engaged in trying to shrink Christianity throughout the history of that poisonous tree we call the Vatican that produces only poison fruit. They did everything they could to grow. And anytime that came under attack, they went into full war mode to ensure that they were going to grow come hook or crook. And it didn't matter if they needed to send soldiers in with bayonets. They were going to get their people to learn Latin, to get a priest, to do the Catholic thing. Right now, they're just selling off these old churches all over here, and there's an endless litany of things. Matter of fact, there's a show on HBO making a mockery out of the Pope right now. So right now, that old center of supposed religion for the Western world is actively pushing for the demise of religion, and the reason for it is transhumanism and the coming artificial reality can't be bogged down by any religious people.
Right, and that all has to do with an idea called ecumenicalism as well. So they want to conjoin all of these different religious ideals throughout the world into one and merge it into the new transhumanist religion. So right. That's basically what it's all about and what it comes down to in a nutshell.
There's
and
your Rain Man.
Okay, there you go. Well, that's a perfect description there. But when you look at it, these three big cities, the Vatican City, City of London, and Washington, D.C., this is basically your holy trinity of the cyberneticists when it comes down to it. This is what they're looking for. This is the holy trinity of the cybernetic control system when it boils down to it, because these are the three cities that they're using as control centers. So this is their holy trinity. And you can see how this stuff will relate one to one with different religious ideals all day long as well. So, I mean, you're talking, there's this crossover that I've found while researching my new book, where you're looking at four basic different things, four basic different principles that you have to look at to kind of understand this control system that's coming into place. First of all, you have to look at religions. Secondly, myths. Thirdly, science, or what they call science. And finally, when it comes down to it, philosophy. So when you have an understanding of these four different levels or four different elements of these facets of the control system they're setting up, this is what we're talking about here. This is what's coming to fruition. This is the whole goal of transhumanism. So these are the four facets of things that they're using to put this whole control structure in place. It's not just simply something technological or technocratic. They're using different alchemical ideas and stuff as well to bring these things to fruition. And that's kind of something that is lost on most people. The whole spiritual underpinnings
on purpose. Right, on purpose. It's all done alchemically because it works. And that's how also we know alchemy matters. But Wayne, I was going to bounce this one off you. The whole Rain Man, rain when used as a name usually means power and blessings from above. And it's not hard to put together that meaning. Think of all the places that wait for their annual rain so they can grow crops. It truly was a blessing from above. But I was just going to point out, who controls the rain now? Who's the Rain Man now?
That's the truth.
This is going to be a thing when we do the 60s episode. It's going to be quite a barn burner. Because I can demonstrate when the United States was demoted openly for the first time that put us on the path that where we are now. And, you know, it's kind of sad when I see in so many comments where, I want to get out of this hell. This place is beautiful, this natural world. What makes it so hard is what corporations and power players and men and women put us through. That's what makes it hard. If every human being treated other human beings and living things with respect, you would see the beauty in this place all day long. But unfortunately, the tax man, the cop, all the things that have just gotten so far out of hand that make it a nightmare to do anything on top of giving up a third of your life to go make paper so that you can have a place to live and eat. It's all gotten to be a bit much, but it wasn't always like this. And like all created things, even this nonsense will see its end at some point.
By the way, I meant to get in there. Eric in the chat room said that Singapore is also a city-state, and that's one I'm not familiar with, so we'll have to look into that.
I was not aware of that at all.
No, but if there are others,
because if that's China's city-state, it makes perfect sense. I would ask Eric. Eric, do you know when it became a city-state? Is this recent? It must be recent. We'll have to look into that because China's going to be a player now because they're completely co-opted and controlled. Remember when Japan went marching in there? You know, it's a whole story over there too. Think about this. In the 1920s, we were fast tracking Japan, America and France and other people to get what the high technology of the time was. And the reason they did it is because they needed to build a war machine in the 20s to be ready for the 40s. This was the power players of the world. So what I'm pointing out here is what they've done to the United States is they've removed all the industry. What that basically means is we used to be a country that could take care of ourselves. We can't now. We're dependent on others for everything, damn near, because they moved it all and they gave it to China. But the thing about China is not only is it communist, so they snap their fingers, they don't have to vote or ask, they can do what they will do. They're also a dictatorship with a president that is XI, which is an encode for 9/11. My point here is as follows. It would make perfect sense to me if there was a city-state put up for that power center, which is wholly owned and operated. And basically what happened is in Silicon Valley, they pushed out all these supposedly new technologies. I don't know how new they actually were. I suspect they've been around for decades. But they couldn't implement them here because us idiots in the West still have dreams of freedom and the American dream. So they ported them over to China in communism and a dictatorship where they could do whatever they pleased. Now it's coming back. And it's encoded with alchemy. That's why it came into Darwin, Australia. They're informing the world this is the evolution of technology for all of you. That's why it hit Darwin. And by the way, Darwin's a made-up nonsensical idea. And that was put in place by alchemy. The alchemy of the mind. So you can demonstrate these things all day long, but I was not aware that Singapore was a city-state. And if it is, then there's your, you're beyond a troika now. Now you got a stool with 4 legs.
And that's kind of an important concept to get to understand as well, because when you look at things encoded in masonry, well, first of all, there's always the Trinity encoded there, but then there's also the concept of 4 square that they put in there, and with 4 square squaring the circle. So that would make more sense if there's a 4th city-state in place now, too. So when you're talking about these things, there's a lot of esoteric things encoded in these ideas that most people wouldn't understand just by glancing at it on the surface. It's something that takes a bit of digging in to really understand a lot of these concepts. But this is basically how they build things. This is the base of the pyramid, if there are 4 city-states in place. So they're just looking to put the capstone on it when it comes down to it. So, when you look at things from that perspective, that's what we could see going on. And it may seem like we're going on a lot of tangents here, which we kind of are, but this all ties together.
Yeah, it all relates.
Back into the things that we were discussing with UFO, anti-gravitic technologies, things like that. All of these things are being used and implemented in what they call the quote-unquote secret space program, which basically is your geoengineering programs that are going on right now. This is the stuff that's controlling the weather. Yep. So who is the Rain Man? It's the geoengineers. It's the secret space program. And now they're implementing this whole new Space Force idea to try and give this thing a public face. So, it's another thing. And they lie about what's above our head. We don't know what space looks like. We don't know what the truth is up there. I think they do have different technologies up there. I do believe they're all in Earth orbit or, within Earth's atmosphere, because I have no reason to believe that they've been beyond that. But if they have, it's not with any technology that they've described they've used to do so.
Not to us.
So.
Well, this, it's not really a tangent so much, though, Wayne. Think about this. You know how long they've been queuing up China? Once you see entertainment and Hollywood do things, these are places that have tie-ins to places like the CFR, and all that media is now owned by these corporations. If you had to guess, Wayne, what do you think the first time we saw Jackie Chan? What year would be the first time we saw Jackie Chan in a movie? Make a guess.
Jackie Chan, I'm going to say 1995 or 96.
Yeah, you're thinking of the Brawl one. You know what the truth of it is? I think it's 1980 or 1981, the Cannonball Run, because I remember seeing it.
Really?
So all the way back.
I remember that movie.
Run. I wasn't aware that he was in that.
He couldn't even speak English. And they had brought him over, and it was kind of a comedic part. They paired him, in one of them, they paired him with Jaws. So it was a little dude kung fu dude and a big dude, and they passed him off as a Japanese guy, I think, in one of
Oh,
them.
he was
'cause
driving the car that
technology.
had. Yeah. I remember
Technology.
that.
So I think it was implying a job. Point is, they were teeing up. They knew about the China thing all the way back then, and people think that's not proof of anything, but when you've been looking as long as we have, you see what happens. And then when it gets serious, you can look at Jet Li. What was the first one he did when he also couldn't speak English? If I had to guess, I'd say it was those Mel Gibson movies. What were they called?
He did The Last Lethal Weapon, but he was already doing stuff before that.
But look how big a movie. I mean, that's with A-list actors. Is my point.
Oh,
so
sure.
He's the lead villain at that point. So you can see the coming crossover. Now it's completely common for a big US A-list actor to go do a Chinese film or vice versa, or have them both together. You can see the integration for the one world globalization, and people just can't understand that you don't look at what's happened. You look at everything that happened before the thing you're looking at happened. We've
got 2 more super chats here. John, once again, thank you so much for $20. The problem is talk. In New York at times I have to get into a fist fight, so I have to fight with everyone.
That seems like a New York thing anyhow, though. Everyone's packed in there so tight. Everyone's on a short
They're a little
fuse.
edgy all the time.
Yeah, man. Give me some space.
John, if you want to send a little more over, maybe we can help you talk about that a bit. I'm not sure how to answer that at the moment. Matthew Ross, New Zealand, $10. Hello. Are there any major alignments happening in 2020 with the sky clock? For example, are different luminaries going to outshine Saturn? I'm not great with that stuff, but do you know of anything, Crow?
Well, yeah, there's going to be all kinds of luminaries that outshine Saturn. Every time we can see Venus, that will be the brightest thing in the sky, except for a full moon. Every time we see a moon, it will outshine Saturn. There are, and I've forgotten, there's actually a perfect. Oh, did we already miss it? I can't get set up here. I've got such a narrow view until I can get a permanent mount high for my scope. There was going to be a shot of a planet behind the moon near new, which would be a perfect chance to prove that what I've been saying, a new moon or a very young moon, very, very young, is see-through. That's why you can't see it when you go looking for a new moon, because it's not there. That's why they call it a new moon. But there are other alignments. I'd have to go look them up. I've been thinking about other things. But yes, there are things coming. In terms of brightness, those things don't really change. Things are as bright as they are, and they shift a little, but not much, mostly.
And of course,
I think I had seen something about. Sorry, I was going to say I think I had seen something about like an alignment of 5 different planets or something at some point this year. I don't know if that's if it's happened already. I remember seeing something like last week or something on Facebook about it.
Well, that would be a big event, alchemical event deal. One of the things that people don't understand is all this nonsense, this fake news, and all these events we see going on, they're all put together alchemically. They're following alchemical process. They're timed to the sky clock. They're following the same process as someone would use to, say, make a medicine out of plants. That alchemical process is being applied to a mental alchemical process. As we were talking about before we came on the end, the JFK nonsense, the third part of that alchemical process is still not complete. They have to reveal all the secrets about it for that to be a completely done alchemical process. So think about it. He was killed less than a month before I was born. I'm over half a century old, and that alchemical process is still going.
Are we sure that the whole 9/11 event didn't have a tie-in with that, though?
Of course it did. There's nothing that you can look at on the world stage that it's kind of like the Mayan calendars. You know how they sometimes show the Mayan calendars like gears where one is connected to the other and they're all spinning each other to make these cycles? There is nothing in the history that we can see that is not part of it. And the reason for that is because a long time ago, some people got really rich and powerful, and that's what happened. And so right now we call them oligarchs, the oldest European families, the black Venetians, the black Guelphs. These are the people. And however that ties to the Vatican, Yeah, it's all alchemical, all of it. And the reason is because it works, which is why they've defamed it and tried to move us all to science. Because if we were all using alchemy, not only would we have medicine that worked, but we'd have all kinds of other things that would appear magical, which really aren't.
Speaking of that, we do have people trying to bring that back, like your friend Sean. They're trying to get real medicine to be a thing again, and of course, it's met with resistance at every turn you make.
Yeah, but look at Sean. He's a prime example of righteousness. We have friends in common with Sean that were begging him, do not say anything in public, don't do anything, they're going to come get you. And Sean said, to hell with you, they have no right to stop me from trying to heal human beings with a natural plant. I don't care what they do to me. They arrested him twice, they took all his stuff twice, they never charged him, and look, he's back. And he never, ever backed off his belief. And that's what I'm talking about. If we had more people like Sean in the world, it wouldn't be such a tough place, because very few people would be standing for the nonsense. They'd be saying, I don't care what you do to me, this is wrong, and I'm not going along with it. Most of us are afraid to do that because we got families and bills and houses and basically bear traps on our legs.
That's right. And I have all the respect in the world for what Sean does. I'm sure he's helped a lot of people. But that's coming out tomorrow, by the way. Yeah, he saved lives.
That's tomorrow's episode.
That's right. Like I keep losing my track of days. That's tomorrow, right? Yeah, tomorrow. Yeah, everyone tune in.
I'm supposed to be sleeping, so I can get up and put that out. I'm not supposed to be out here.
You're not supposed to be on a live stream with us. But yes, tomorrow our episode 196. If I remember
196.
Correctly. We've been doing so many back-to-back lately, I'm starting to lose track. But yes, episode 196 being released tomorrow on Crow 777 Radio is with Sean, and we are going to be discussing just some updates with him and go into the differences between CBD, the whole thing, with the oil, what it was, what it is, what it does, how you can help yourselves, all the experiences he's had, and we get into it. Yeah, it's a great episode.
Well, I was going to go to bed, but when I found out you guys were syndicated with sponsors and all that, I was like, damn, I better get out there and see what's going on in the real world. I'm living in my own private Idaho here.
That's right, and you and I will be doing this ourselves this Sunday. Don't forget that.
That's right. You and I have left TFR, and we'll be doing a live stream here on Secrets of Saturn every Sunday night, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Yeah, and if anybody doesn't know, we weren't sure really what our listenership and what kind of just how much we were really having an impact on TFR. We do have a core group of followers between like 30 and 40 people that always show up in the chat room, but we could never get solid numbers on anything, and we really just didn't know what to make of it after doing 71 episodes, if I remember correctly. And these live streams took off like crazy. I mean, the first day, second time, you were seeing all these views, and then I check afterwards, and hundreds of people, almost 1,000, have already watched the video. So I mean, that's some serious business when it's only Wayne and I, and my channel's small. So we start talking about doing a regular Crow one, and I'm quite certain the audiences will be even larger. So we'll see. And of course we're in control here, and I think the sound quality will be far superior doing it this way. So
well, we'll see though, Jason. This will be interesting to see. You should get big relatively quick when we switch over to do this, so it'll be interesting to see if YouTube does anything to slow it down. But also we'll be able to review a lot of old scope footage and do stuff like that on this format.
Right. Yeah, definitely. So yeah, we want to kind of do something that's not just another chat show, but we're gonna try and incorporate video and all that. It's a learning thing, and but we'll get there. I think it's gonna be great. But hopefully my channel will get larger, which will benefit, of course, what we do with Crow and what Wayne and I do every Wednesday. So we'll see how that goes. But anyway, that is going to be every Sunday, 6 p.m. EST, just at the same time we did TFR. So hopefully you tune in for that.
Plus, no annoying commercials except for, go to lowerthefriction.com and put in SOS as your
If we have commercials, it's because we want them there.
That's right.
And if anybody's got a coffee one, I'll take a coffee sponsor.
Hey, a coffee sponsor.
I'm not joking either. Well, I'll take one of those.
I'm taking 2 here, guys. If we're going to 11, I'll be right back.
All right.
All right.
All right, Wayne,
I think
let's
we can carry on for a few minutes.
We've only got 20 minutes left anyway, so where do we want to kind of steer this to end up with the concepts we're on here?
I think we could look at the whole geoengineering idea, because Tesla technology ties directly into this as well. You could look at, like I said, I was looking mostly at the UFO idea in its relation to Tesla because of a lot of the ideas he put forth with the advent of like electrogravitics and that kind of a thing with the propulsion systems. But there's a lot more to it than just that. Basically, a lot of the stuff that Tesla put out is an undercurrent for much of our modern technologies now, our communication technologies, things of that nature. So when you look at how this relates to the geoengineering programs, they have things in the sky that we're totally unaware of, like that they're even up there all the time at this point. And Crow has filmed a large number of these objects up there. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, there's definitely something there. So, I mean, you're looking at things like cloaking technologies, things of that ilk, which also tie directly back to the work of Tesla and some of his contemporaries back then. So, if you could have an object in the sky that isn't visible to the naked eye, that's kind of an alarming type thing, especially if it's not detectable on standard radars or things like that. But many of these technologies, I suspect, are used to steer weather currents and that kind of a thing at this point. And also, they've been spraying a lot of different chemicals into the sky, and they've been ionizing the upper atmosphere, and there's a reason for this. And this ties back to a lot of telecommunication type technologies as well. So it makes it more readily available for them to be able to bounce signals around all across the sky. And they could do different things with this, different kinds of signals as well, not just your standard radio waves or something like that. There's a whole ton of things they could do with this stuff. And one of the things that seems to come up in conversations about like UFOs and stuff like that a lot is something called Project Bluebeam. And this directly relates to the spraying of the sky as well, because they basically made it a giant projector field up there if they wanted to project some type of holographic display or something up there. They could do that, and they could do it complete with sound and olfactory type stuff too, smells, everything. Like they could actually hit all your senses with these different kinds of things. This technology exists. And they could do it with the stuff that they sprayed in the sky. Because unbeknownst to most people, one of the things that they're actually spraying in the sky with these chemtrails is a little substance called niobium. And this makes for a perfect backdrop for a projector for them. So these nanoparticulates of niobium up there make for this perfect kind of a field for them to project an image on. So that's one of the technologies that I think we will be seeing used sometime in the near future. There's been talk about this for years, doing like some kind of a mock alien invasion type thing, things like this. So, I mean, I think there's something to that idea. The technologies definitely do exist. All you have to do is go look on YouTube. You can see these different holographic displays where they have just these different images and stuff. One of the ones that I've seen, it shows a high school gymnasium, and it shows a whale jump up and splash through the floor. And it looks totally 100% like it's a real thing right there. And if they could do this on that small scale, if they have the nanoparticulates in place in the sky to make a perfect projector screen for it, imagine what they could do with that. So this is something that I think is a real possibility upcoming.
White Rascal, thank you for the $5 super chat. I was going to get to this, actually, but you beat me to it. Matt Landman, of course, our friend Matt Landman, who's one of the hardest working activists out there that we know of for chemtrails and 5G. He has his film Frankenskies, which if you haven't seen it, go check that out. And he has his new Sparrow protection clothing line that he actually sent me a hat for. And I'm very grateful for that. But it's Spero, S-P-E-R-O, protectionclothing.com. And he's doing a really good job, man. It's to help ward off all the nasty EMFs. Check out Matt if you're not familiar with him. As a matter of fact, Wayne, I've been meaning to ask him if he wants to come on a live stream since we're doing well with keeping the numbers up every week.
Oh, I'd love to have Matt on, certainly. Yeah, that'd be great.
Sounds like Crow came back with us. We've only got 15
Yeah.
minutes left, so all right, let's start wrapping this up, gentlemen. Where do we want to? Well, we're talking about UFOs and Tesla technology. So, to kind of recap, if indeed there's something to the work of people like Nikola Tesla and what they call electrogravitic propulsion, meaning using electromagnetism to push objects around and basically defy gravity, but it's not really doing that. It's two electromagnetic forces pushing off each other, basically. There's a guy who I don't even know if he's still around, but got quite famous, did a lot of Art Bell kind of stuff years back, called John Hutchison, and he had the Hutchison effect. And he was doing things like this, making things fly around, things like that. I don't think he was very good at controlling it, though. So imagine if you had multi-billions of dollar budgets thrown at you every other day, if you could make that work and make an aircraft fly. John, thank you for the $2. Matt Lemon is indeed doper than dope. Thank you. We agree. But go ahead, gentlemen, take it away.
Yeah, John Hutchinson's work is really, really interesting, and I think the stuff he was doing, this was the real deal. He's kind of gone into like more of, he's disappeared from public view now at this point. But yeah, he's done some interesting stuff. I think largely electrogravitics are, so-called anti-gravity technologies, just like everything else, are misdescribed to us. This isn't really what's going on. I think it has more to do with the actual ether itself, and it involves moving the ether itself in a way. And I think gravity relates 100% to this, because when it comes down to it, I think there's only like one general force that underlies everything, and that's some form of electricity, or some people would argue something called dielectricity, which is something, it's pretty similar. Like electricity is a modality of dielectricity, as is magnetism. So it's like two sides of the same coin, but it's the same force. And I think gravity falls into this category too. It's the same thing. It's just a different way that it affects the ether. And that's basically what it's about. And I think when you look back into like 1800s, excuse me, late 1800s ether physics from guys like Maxwell, you could kind of see better descriptions of how this works. What this is it creates a disturbance in the ether field, and it causes these things to happen. So electricity and magnetism don't exactly operate on the principles that they tell us they do. They don't really understand exactly how they operate, but I think it has something to do with ether. And I haven't looked enough into this yet, but I am starting to research it a little bit more so, because I think it has more to do with ether than it does with, say, magnetism or anything like that. But it's one general force, and it's some form of electricity that pretty much affects the ether field and causes these different effects. So that's what I think it is, and that's what I think these technologies are developed on, is this kind of a concept in secret.
Well, I think you could almost demonstrate one of the main intentions of making up UFOs, the idea that little gray guys are some super smart lizard people lifted from Conan the Barbarian, as far as we can tell.
I thought they were Sleestack.
Think about it. The military is going to do all this technology. Look what they're doing now with the chemtrails. Look at the orbs. So with all this narrative they put in place, whenever you see something, the average person is going to say, oh my God, I saw a UFO. They're not even necessarily going to, put together what that word means, but you see what I'm saying here. In a normal, sane world where that kind of mind warp hadn't been put out there, people are going, what the heck is that? Who built that? Those are the questions you'd be asking. So I think that just on reasonable deduction alone, you can kind of see what's going on here.
Right. Well, go ahead, Wayne.
Oh, I was just going to say, yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where they kind of put this social engineering narrative out there, this social programming, with this whole alien idea. And just like Jason was alluding to, this Lee stack. Remember that old TV show Land of the Lost?
Yeah.
Not only that, they tie in the whole fake dinosaur idea too. With
Oh,
that.
yeah.
So I mean, it's just mind-boggling how far this programming goes back, and how exactly they hit us on all these different platforms and levels with it. So it's really an uphill battle when you're trying to maintain your common sense looking at a lot of this stuff. And it really is a fight sometimes, because the cognitive dissonance is real with a lot of this stuff. It's been so ingrained and indoctrinated into us from an early age that when you come to the realization that the vast majority of things you've ever been taught have been totally wrong, then you have to come at things, and you have to really rethink things you thought you knew. And it's really a rediscovery process for a lot of different things. But yeah, when you look at the way we've been socially programmed just through these subtle things like television shows like that and stuff, it's just astounding.
Get this, Wayne. When I took my break, I was still thinking about Rain Man, and I always do this test. I thought to myself, because the runtime and the release date always have information encoded, so I tried to predict before I looked it up, and I thought, well, probably it's going to be 8s, right? The mercurial and the time idea. I said there's almost certainly got to be a 7 there for the mind weapon idea, and then I thought, well, maybe I'm wrong about those. It'll just be 33. Get this. December 16, there's your 7, 1988, and the runtime is
88 miles per hour?
133 minutes. I predicted all of them because it's 133 minutes. So I actually literally just now, I gotta start doing, well, I don't know how I'd prove that I didn't look first. I'm gonna say I gotta write the stuff down first and then look.
Well, you gotta do something where it's time stamped, and then you don't do it till the next day.
Yeah, but the problem is, people could say, oh, you looked that up yesterday. But I'm just telling you, right now I was thinking, at first I was thinking, okay, the 9/11 idea will be there. And I thought, no, not the 9/11 idea. It's got to be 8s. Got to be 8s.
Because it's the 80s.
88. And then I thought 7, the mind weapon's got to be there. So the 7 was there. But then I thought, well, maybe I'm wrong about those. It'll just be 33. All 3 of them were there.
Yeah, well, we all know that the number thing is... I mean, they play that way everywhere with everything, and I barely looked into it, and I guess we should get a good plug-in for our friend Hoaxbuster. I think he's probably the best at finding these little nuggets of truth and tying them all together, and even you and I are just like, whoa, that was pretty damn good, man.
Well, he's very good at drawing no-nonsense parallels to the point where he doesn't even speak in the clips. Yeah, he's good at illustrating what he's found, but more than that, he's well versed in all the old myths. And if people, that's one thing I would say to everyone. You ask why all roads go to Rome. Well, we've kind of explained that, but if you don't understand Greek and Roman myth, you're going to miss half the stuff that, particularly this year, you're going to miss damn near everything that happens this year. We got the Olympics coming. Where does that come from? If you understand Greek and Roman myth, you won't be fooled as often.
Jeremiah Harris, thank you for the $35 super chat. He says, thank you for all of your hard work and diligence. I hope all you gentlemen have perfect vision and perfect health in 2020. Thank you so much. And of course, we wish that for you guys as well. What is it you always say, Crow? You have your really nice phrase that I like that you always put
out. Well, I no longer comment on YouTube because if I do, censorship will follow. So I no longer write descriptions, and my titles are kind of occult titles. But I always write in the description of every single one, I would like to wish you all a happy, healthy, and higher-minded year ahead. But lately, I've been switching it up to screw with their AI. I'll switch happy with healthy. So there's a change, and I'm laughing because I know that's how they scan those little descriptions and titles. But that's what I write on every single video now. And by the way, I haven't been censored in quite some time, per se. That's not true. They pulled a video last week, but I mean in general.
Yeah, we thought that one was going to get it, though. That was a Kurt video, and more than likely Kurt's hitting pretty close to the...
No, I didn't bring you up to date. I challenged the Kurt video, and I won.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but the one that they pulled was one where I was talking with, I think, might have been Randy, where I predicted a shooting by date, not by place or anything. No. It was fake shootings. Well, just suffice to say, it had fake shootings, and it had hoax in the title. So they quietly removed it and didn't inform me either. They didn't send me a thing saying it was removed.
Well, I gotta tell you, I don't even put any kind of
just take it
hashtags in this
down.
anymore. I don't put anything, and it's not worth it. I think that we have enough of an audience that understands that we try to go over important stuff for them, and I would rather build it through word of mouth than putting a whole bunch of hashtags and all that, because I'm just handing the AI crackers at that point. Here, have a biscuit.
Yeah, I don't
Come
do it.
find
The
me and
other
get
one-
me.
The other one they pulled, Jason, is the one where my wife and I are singing "Nobody Died, Nobody Got Hurt," where I animated the little crows across all
That
the
one was
fake
funny.
events. They pulled that once, so I retitled it, and the Academy Award goes to, and I put a different thumbnail on it, and I changed the runtime, and it ran for a long, long time. They just pulled that one.
That's a drag. That was
They
great,
figured
though.
it out.
Well, it's going to get better and better every year. We know this. They're just going to keep figuring out how to do things. That's why I'm not giving them anything. And I like the fact that we're joking around and laughing at the more we keep this as a casual thing, I think it's the harder. It's going to be harder for them to figure out. We're making the AI work harder to figure out what we're talking about. Because even though we talk about heavy stuff every week, I mean, if you're going to have me in a room, I'm going to crack jokes all the time. That's just what I do. So.
Oh yeah, we're gonna be goofy and obnoxious, no doubt about it. So goofy and obnoxious. That's a win-win for YouTube. So I'm sure the algorithms kind of don't know how to pick up when you're putting serious stuff in with goofy and obnoxious. So we can kind of dodge them.
Yeah,
that
we
way.
could just quit talking and write everything in cursive, and the AI would be completely be fine.
And we'll just hold it up to the screen, wave the paper.
Yeah, each one of
Here's
us
number
in our own
one.
handwriting.
Or,
And you
or
gotta
we could do it. Or we could do it Pictionary style and just draw a little picture of what we're talking about.
We'll get out our
That's what I do.
spirographs.
That's what I do on every episode image, and I laugh my butt off because I know the AI can't figure it out, but a human being can.
That's great. Well, the human beings will always be smarter. The computers might be able to outcalculate us, but I think we'll always be more ingenuitive.
Is ingenuitive a word? Well,
I don't know.
It is now.
It is now because I said
see how
so.
smart those humans are? They can invent new words on the fly.
On the spot, man. That's my word, and I give it to you.
Ingenuitive. Where's Baldini? We need to run that word by him.
Well, you see, that's not actually a real word, but more power to you. We love Baldini. Yeah, actually, I didn't see him here tonight. I wonder where he's at. I should have pestered him. But, all right, we've only got a couple minutes left here, gentlemen. So, why don't we get our final words in here? Crow, you want to go first?
Rain Man.
Rain Man?
There's my final word. No, tomorrow the Sean episode's going to come out on crow777radio.com. He's out from under it all now. He's back doing what he ever did, trying to help people. And I assure you that man is true to his word. He has a core set of values, and even if he's going to jail, he will not violate them. Even if he's going to lose everything he owns, and all he's doing is making what he considers to be medicine and trying to help people. Other than that, we've got a hell of an episode 200. We've got the Q&A coming, Jason, which I think will be next week. Half of the Q&A. We got so many questions. That's going to be a couple episodes.
Mm-hmm.
But when we get past 200, we're going to lay down a 60s episode that'll blow the roof off this.
Yeah,
habitation.
That's going to be quite a thing when we get that done. So, Wayne, what do you want to say to finish this off?
I just want to thank everybody for coming out once again and listening to our musings here. It's good that people could tune in and get a bit of levity along with some good information, and enjoy the conversation. So everybody, thanks for coming out again. If anybody has any questions for me directly, you can reach me at alchemicaltechrevolution@gmail.com, or just drop by my Facebook page, Files from the Conspiratorium, and drop a question or something in there. So, I'm usually pretty interactive with people on there. That's my primary contact points. So I got a new book in the works that should be coming out sometime this spring. And other than that, I'll be here every week with Jason and checking in with Crow regularly and just doing what we do. So.
Hey, not one person mentioned Mudflood or Tartaria this time. I don't know if they've realized it irritates me, but I'll be the one to mention it this time. Mudflood and Tartaria. I think we've got something in mind for that, don't we?
Jason, thanks.
Well, we've got something in mind for
I
that,
think so.
and we'll be getting to that. But thanks, everybody, so much. If you would be so kind and want to check out, please take a shot over to our sponsor, lowerthefriction.com, who is none other than Randy from Houston, also a gentleman who shot the Lunar Wave. Thanks, everybody, so much for being here, and of course, we'll be back next week. I always forget, a promo code SOS will get you 5% off the bottle of Lower the Friction. And I'll let you guys know how it's doing in my car, too, by the way. That's why we did that, just so that I can see. I have a 2018 Honda Fit. It's a little bitty 1.5-liter engine, so it gets decent gas mileage. But what I noticed so far was getting 3 miles per gallon more, and we'll see if that increases as time goes by. But anyway, thank you so much, gentlemen, for being here as always. Thank you to our wonderful audience. Thank you for the super chats. And we will be seeing you next week. Don't know the topic yet, but there it is.
And Sunday.
Oh, yes, and Sunday. Sunday, join Crow and myself for our first live stream. So there we go, folks. Thank you, and good night.